think we're just about on time now. Just about. Did I time it right? Oh, there we go. Sorry for that, everyone. Just typing, was making sure that everything was available for everyone to be able to see. Hello, and thank you for joining us. This is No Soundbites Allowed. I am your host, Michael Voss, Dragon of the Southern Tier, the political dragon in our offices in the Bronx, New York. We're happy to be here with you every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to hear your voices from anywhere and everywhere across the world. I thank you for joining us today, especially if this is the first time you are with us. And I see user has been banned is with us right there. I thank you, and I'm happy to see that you're the first comment. Let me start by saying to all of my Marines who are enjoying the Marine Corps birthday on Friday, November 10th, 248th birthday of the Marine Corps, 1 year older than the United States. I hope all of my Marine brothers and sisters found that to be a peaceful day. Those who are planning to be deployed, I hope you will be safe. I look forward to seeing you return whole and sound as soon as possible. Then we have Veterans Day. That was yesterday. To all the veterans that are out there, I thank you for your service. I thank you for having come back home, and I hope you have come home safe and sound and whole. I am appreciative of everything you have done because it is only because of those veterans am I able to speak to you around the world and to enjoy the conversation in free speech without any real fear of repercussions like we see around the rest of the world. Yes, it may be suppressed. Yes, we may see some censorship. But in the rest of the world, the secret police would show up at your door and shoot you for daring to have the kind of conversations we're going to have here today. And we're going to be talking about things I'm pretty sure that YouTube, that Google, that the White House do not want you to have a conversation about. They do not want you to think about these things, and we're going to talk about it. Everything from the Tennessee shooter and the reasons why the Tennessee shooter decided to commit a mass murder to go and kill children. We need to have that conversation because we've had that conversation when it comes to the Buffalo shooter, when we've talked about the Uvalde shooter. We sort of had that conversation when we were talking about Dante Brooks, when he went into Waukesha and drove his car through a Thanksgiving Day parade. We kind of had that conversation with the black supremacist on the New York City subway system as he decided to try and mass murder individuals. See, when it's not the message that the White House, that the Democrats, the progressives want to have out there, we don't really get those stories, and thus we get what happened in Tennessee completely shrouded in mystery. It isn't that it isn't true, kind of like Biden's laptop, Hunter Biden's laptop. It was true, it was real, but they didn't want to talk about it. Why? Because it might affect your vote. It might affect the way that you're going to elect somebody, and therefore it was verboten. You couldn't talk about it because they wanted to fortify the 2020. They wanted to fortify the 2022, and they are fortifying the 2024 election. So certain topics are off limits. They're off the plantation. You can't speak about it because you're the bad guy. Steven Crowder was the bad guy. Why? Because he told people the truth. No one has denied that the documents that he published were anything but valid. They're real. The reasons that the Tennessee trans shooter, why did they do it? Because they were an evil, broken individual, and they had serious problems. They were deeply involved in the woke ideology. And that's why they did what they did. That's just a fact. And we're not supposed to talk about that. Why? Because you might not vote the same way. Because you might say, perhaps we have gone too far in this fad that has swept across the nation, that we have not considered the consequences of pushing people down this one track that they may not belong on, that may not be the best fit for them. So we'll talk a little bit about that. We'll talk about the United States economy and how this is going to affect you. We are in a recession. We have been in a recession since August of 2022. This was all completely predictable. We predicted it as far back as February 17th of 2021. You can look up the video that we have telling you that the economy is going to fall apart, and it was directly because of the Biden economic policies. That the Democratic policies for the U.S. economy would devastate not just the United States, but the rest of the world. And here we are. And inflation is not going away. Unemployment is increasing. Things are getting worse, and they're probably going to get a lot more worse before we're done. So we wanted to talk about that. We want to talk about, so we're going to talk about the economy. We're going to talk about what's coming up. We have approximately a week to pass either a continuing resolution or the budget for the United States so that the United States doesn't shut down, which is something we cannot afford, especially as our economy gets worse and worse. We're going to talk a little bit about that. We obviously will be talking about what's happening overseas as it affects us here in the United States, and what happens in the United States is affecting the rest of the world. We're going to have this conversation because no one else in the news media wants to take the time to actually go through these issues with you, to actually have an honest conversation, to look at the facts that exist, not just the information that's the allowed, the approved messages that we see in the United States, but also news from around the world, to see what's really going on, to really talk with you about it so you can be prepared, so you can make plans, so that going forward, it's not going to be a shock to your system and you don't know what to do. I think that's important. I don't think people panic when they know what's happening. I think people panic and they're fearful and they are led by the nose when they don't know what's going on and they're saying, do something, because they don't know what else to say. We don't agree with that on this channel. And we look forward to hearing from anyone in the world. In fact, let me just put this up here right now. We hope that you will like and share and subscribe because we're doing our very best to try and do the job that MSNBC with its thousands, tens of thousands of employees, the New York Times with its tens of thousands of employees, what the mainstream news media will not do. They will not talk to you. They will not have a conversation with you. They won't give you the details. They'll give you a summary of how they feel about the details, and that's not good enough. So we're going to try and go through that, and I see user has been banned is commenting, and you too can comment on YouTube, on Facebook. Our phone lines are down at the moment. I'm not a rich man. I've told that to people for years now. This costs money, and I don't make money, and we do our best. But we do hope that you will help support us. You can donate if you want to. You can join our Patreon. It's $1.50 a month for over 30 hours of content per month. But realistically, all you have to do is like, share, or subscribe. That's all we ask for. Like, share, subscribe. That's it. It's free. It costs you nothing. And it helps us with the algorithm fighting against YouTube, Google, and the mainstream media and their suppression of the news you deserve to hear. Okay. So we've gone through all of that. And I'm sure that the topics we're going to be talking about today are going to really piss off the Biden-Harris administration, Democrats, the Democratic Socialists of America. There's a huge swath of social media giants that are going to hate this. We don't care. We're going to have the conversation anyway. And I want to start off, I think, talking about what's happening here in America. Now, I only have one screen, so I'm going to do my best to try and get both screens up for you to let you see what's going on. And I'll be jumping back and forth with that. So bear with me there. But something that I think is kind of important, you may recall that there was one of the problems that are facing the world right now is the economy, is energy. Energy is one of the backbones. That and food are the two biggest causes of inflation across the world and in the United States. If you don't have the energy, you can't collect the crops, you can't distribute the food, you can't get people either to the farms or to the stores or to get to process the food. You need energy. So energy is incredibly important. And the less energy we have, or the more expensive that energy is, the more expensive your food and everything else becomes. The second thing being food. And we know, as we have reported since January of 2022, there is a global food shortage. At this moment, there is 30% less food in the world today than in 2019. That is a fact. And it is a fact that the expectation is in 2024 going into 2025, there will be a total global food shortage of somewhere around between 40 to 50% less food than was in 2019. I say this not to panic you. I don't want you to be scared. That doesn't mean go out to the store and just buy everything. Don't do that. Panics do not help anyone, and in fact, it hurts you more than anything else. You go out, you panic, you buy everything on the shelves, the prices go up, there's not enough supply for everyone, some people will go hungry. Panicking doesn't help. What you do, as we have been saying since February of 2022, every time you go to the store, buy 10% more food. Buy food that will last longer. Get noodles, get rice, flour, canned foods, things that will last longer term and that you can stockpile so that you will be able to not only afford more, but you will be able to feed yourself and your family. For those who have taken our advice on this channel since February of 2022, you have saved money. You have food in your stockpiles right now. You are feeding your family because you listened to our advice. We'll listen to it again. You're not hearing this in anywhere else in the news media, and you should be. We know for a fact, because of the war that continues with the Ukraine and Russia, that the Ukrainian farmers are not able to match the supply. They cannot properly farm the fields, and they can't get the food distributed around the world, both because of Russia and just because of the war. And it is that difficulty that is going to cause them to produce even less food next year. And again, this isn't a winter thing. A lot of people look at, when we hear about the food shortage, they think, well, that means we just have to get through the winter and everything's okay. That isn't true, because you have to get through the winter. You have to wait for the spring and the fall in the fields so that they can plant the crops. The crops have to grow. The crops have to be collected and processed, and then they come out. It is a year-long process. And knowing that we didn't have enough food this year, and next year they're going to produce even less food, now you know it's going to take you until 2025, maybe, to get back to anywhere close to where we were in 2019. So buy 10% more food, and food that will last longer every time you go to the store. You will save money as the cost of food is going up, and next year it will go up again. We're looking at, right now, the United States has about 12% food inflation. Just food itself is up about 12% versus January of 2021. And we expect that number to go even higher. It may get as high as 15, 17, possibly even 20% more versus 2021 prices, or another roughly 5 to 7% higher than where it is today. We're telling you now. We're warning you. We've been doing this, and no one else in the media wants to have this conversation, because you might vote differently if you knew that they have failed, that the Biden-Harris administration, that elected officials have failed you, that the news media has failed to inform you and allow you the time to prepare. They don't want to admit that they screwed up. They don't want you to know that. We don't care. We're telling you now. We told you before. And the best thing that could possibly happen is that we're wrong. I hope to God that we are wrong. I would love to see a bumper crop of food coming out of the Ukraine next year, that all of the crops are better in the world and everyone gets fed, that we have as much food in the world being produced as in 2019. I pray that actually happens. I would love to be wrong. It means the cost of food would drop and you would be able to buy eggs again. You would be able to buy lettuce and the various vegetables that people like to eat. I don't eat vegetables, but I know they're expensive nowadays. I'd be happy. I'd be happy to be wrong and see the price go down. What would that mean for you if you bought an extra 10% food? It means that you have the ability to donate food to the homeless, to veterans, to those in need in your community. It's a win-win. I don't mind being wrong, but it's unlikely that we are going to be wrong. We haven't been wrong yet about this, and we are telling you to buckle down because it's going to get worse. It's going to get more expensive. Food is going to become more scarce, and it doesn't matter whether you're a vegetarian, a vegan, or you're like me, a carnivore. The prices are all going to go higher. You better be prepared. Hey, hot chicks. Good to see you there. I love it. Get fat now. You're funny. I love it, hot chicks. Hot chicks, do you see me? I'm skinny. I have a high metabolism. I can't get fat. They've been telling me that for my entire life since I was in junior high school. I don't get fat. And a lot of people say, well, that's, woe is you. You're skinny. No, trust me. That's a bad thing too. A lot of women like men who are a little bit heavier than I am. And the problem is I need more food. Believe it or not, I have a high metabolism. I need to eat more and more higher caloric foods. It's more expensive for me to eat in a week than the average person, believe it or not, to stay healthy. So it's difficult. Even skinny people will be affected by this. I don't care who you are. Again, doesn't matter if you're a vegan, a vegetarian, a carnivore. Whatever you eat, there's going to be less of it, and it's going to be more expensive. And we're estimating 5 to 7% more. It could be way more than that. What is that? User has been banned. Hello, user. It's good to see you here. It says, we aren't Soviet enough for that just yet. We will get there. You're funny. Eat lard. Pick stuff up. Put said stuff down. Well, we'll see. We will see. But again, this is both part of our public service announcement and something that we believe is very important. And while we've been the only ones in the mainstream news media, and again, look back at our weekly videos. We have been saying this consistently for years now. We have been warning people and preparing you. So if you listen to nothing else in the show, if you share nothing else from this program with anyone else, you take a clip and anything else you provide, this is what you need to share with other people. Prepare to have higher prices and less food. Just don't panic. Just prepare. 10% more every time you go to the store, and you will be okay. I can't do better than that, folks. I don't have the reach of MSNBC or, the New York Times or the BBC. I can only do what I can. Share this with other people. It won't hurt the nation. It will help it. Yeah, Dow, I am. Hey, Dow, thank you for joining us. And yes, I am talking about the next wave of food shortages. We're already in one. I know. It's been out of the news cycle that we have continued to be in a food shortage since roughly 2022. And no one wants to talk about the fact that we have about 30% less food in the world, but we have. And just because the news media doesn't talk about it, doesn't mean it isn't happening or that it's not affecting you every month, every week when you go to the store. Dow says he did see a report on it, but haven't looked into the reason for it. Well, to answer the question about why is this happening, and just to truncate the news, but about 15% of the food, the third largest food producer in the world, wheat, grain, corn, comes out of the Ukraine. They make about 15% of all the wheat, corn, grain in the world. They are very fertile. It's one of the reasons why Russia has always, historically, for hundreds of years, always tried to capture the Ukraine region. It's because of its ability to produce food. And so with the war, that has reduced the ability of farmers to produce that food. In addition, because Russia wants access to the Black Sea, to the Crimea, and that's where they're fighting in the south. That's one of the reasons why Russia is trying to get the southern portion of Ukraine, is because that's where all the shipping lanes are. And Russia right now has pretty much blockaded that, and there have been agreements with the UN to have limited amounts of food to go out, mostly to nations that Russia is friendly with. Many African nations that have agreements with Russia and China are some of the few places that are getting shipments of food, and the rest of it has been shut down. They're not allowing grain to be exported like it used to, and therefore you have that shortage. So it's both less is being produced and less is able to be delivered around the world. That's the reality. That's it in a nutshell. If you wanted the 30-second, 1-minute answer, that's it. In the most simplest of terms, that's why there's less food in the world and why there's going to be even less food next year. It's just that simple. And you would think the news media would be able to say that. You would think that this is something on the nightly news. And again, I don't think people would panic if you say, just buy 10% more food. Don't panic. America is not going to become Bangladesh. We're not going to become like most of the African nations. We're not going to become Haiti overnight. We're not going to suddenly starve. But there will be less food on the shelves. There will be less choices, and they will be more expensive. That's a fact. So just buy a little bit more and prepare. It's not that hard. Dow says, well, the reason for the new wave of shortages that are coming and driving prices. Well, this is the reason that we're continuing to see the pressure on the farmers, and the continuation of the war is draining resources. They're using fuel not to run the farm equipment, but to run the tanks that keep getting destroyed because the Ukrainian military isn't trained on how to run a Leopard 2 or an Abrams 1 or a Bradley fighting vehicle. They just don't have the personnel and the training, but they need for the vehicles that they have, the jets that they're trying to fly. They're diverting their resources to the war effort more and more, as quite honestly, and why you don't hear about the war, the Ukraine-Russia war, as much as Russia's winning. It's not because I like Russia. It's not because I want Russia or Putin to win. I don't. But the reality is that the longer that the war goes on, the more Russia is winning, and the closer they're getting to basically just usurp or overtake a large portion of the Ukraine. That's just a fact. And so this is something we have to take account of. It's not going to end anytime soon, but it is, the direction is there. And that's why the media stopped talking as much about Ukraine and Russia, because as much as the United States, we put in about $200 million into this war, this proxy war so far, and we really have nothing to show for it. The Ukraine is not winning. And so, again, that would reflect badly on the Biden-Harris administration and its international policy, or whatever passes for the international policy of the Biden-Harris administration. Sanctions have not worked against Russia at all. They just haven't worked. We have not diminished or decreased their capabilities because they're working with North Korea, they're working with Iran, they're working with China, they're circumventing UN sanctions and restrictions. So we haven't, the Biden-Harris administration and its focus, its push in the proxy war hasn't been effective. That's just a fact. You don't have to like it. You don't have to approve of it. It's just the reality that is in the world at this time. And again, why doesn't the media want to talk about it? Because they're trying to fortify the 2024 election as they did in 2020. They don't want to talk about this because you would say, well, then Biden hasn't done his job. He's failed. And it's hurting America as well as the rest of the world. And you may not vote for him. Or that doesn't mean you're going to vote for Donald Trump. You might vote for RFK. Or more importantly, and this is the part that Democrats are really terrified of, you may not go out and vote at all. And that's what they're really terrified of. That Democrats don't go out and vote. They don't care if Republicans don't go out and vote. They want you to think that your vote doesn't count and that you shouldn't go out and vote as long as they get their people to go out and vote. That's all they care about. They don't want everyone to vote. They don't mind the fact that there is massive voter apathy that we have seen throughout the entire nation in election after election and growing as we go. In the last 2 decades, this apathy has been growing more and more in each and every election. And they're okay with that because we've seen what's the answer amongst Democrats. Well, as we reported 2 weeks ago, Bridgeport, Connecticut, what are they doing? Well, we can see in court, the Democratic Board of Elections employee been there for 20 years. As discussed in court, her testimony is, well, she is accepting mail-in ballots that are not signed. That is a fact. It happened in the Bridgeport mayoral race. We know this. She's been doing that for 20 years. It's the policy of her department. They just accept all the mail-in ballots, signed or not, even though it's a violation of Connecticut law, even though it negatively impacts elections, and it's a nullification of voters. We also know there's video of employees of the Board of Elections in Connecticut stuffing ballots. There's video of it. But again, that's not to say that American elections aren't the most secure and safe elections that have ever existed. We know that they must be because YouTube requires that I say that when I talk about elections. We know this must be true because that is the approved message coming from the White House through social media, through the mainstream media, telling you that's the answer. Every election is absolutely secure. And if you don't say that, you're the problem. So I am saying it because I want to have this conversation with you. At the same time, this is what's happening in our court system. That isn't national news because that's not important. They don't want to talk about it nationally because you might think that your Board of Elections could be doing something just like what's happening in Connecticut. And that may mean that you don't vote Democrat. You may not go out and vote. And that could hurt Democrats. And that's not fortifying the election. So let's not talk about it at all. If there is anyone who disagrees with me with this, I'm happy to have that conversation. If there is an elected Democrat, a member of the Board of Elections in any state whatsoever, and you think I have misinformed the public, please come on. I will be happy to make sure that people will hear your voice. I will find a way. I will borrow the money to make sure that you can speak live to this issue if you think I am incorrect. But I'm not. Because, again, this is what's happening in the courts as we speak. This has been the revelation we have seen in courts in Pennsylvania, in Michigan, in Wisconsin. We've seen this consistently in Ohio. This is the reality. But, and when I say fortifying the elections, by the way, I am referring back to the report from Newsweek, which was in February of 2022, talking about how Joe Biden won, and there was a shadow cabal made up of news media, of social media companies, and politicians working together to fortify the election so that Joe Biden would win. I didn't say that. That's what Newsweek reported. So again, the fact checkers out there, you think I'm wrong, go to your own mainstream news media sources. They said this. I'm only reporting that same news that people are supposed to forget about. So let me go. Dow says, so legacy media is equating food insecurity as shorthand for food shortages. Government is saying that there's no food shortages, but hunger is rising. Yes, that's the way that they reword this and remake this so it sounds good for their ideology is, well, it's not because international policy has failed and the Biden-Harris administration has failed the public and the world in terms of its leadership. No, that's only local. And that's because your local politician isn't progressive enough. Okay, but that's just a farce in and of itself. Again, I'm not telling you anything that's not in the news, but most people don't know it's in the news. The media has not emphasized that, and you have to search for the various stories to find this information. But it is out there. And we've covered it, again, for years. We've been covering this consistently for years. We're one of the few news media sources out there, political commentary, that have been talking about this. But it's not the only thing that we've been talking about. So I was bringing that up to talk about energy and inflation going into 2025. And part of the reason why we're going to see the food shortages get even worse is the other component, the main leading component, which we spoke about, which is energy. Energy is a massive factor. Again, if you don't have the energy, you can't run the tanks, you can't run the farm equipment, you can't run the trucks to make the delivery to the supermarket. You need energy. And solar and wind don't work. You can't put a sail on an 18-wheeler and have it travel halfway across your country. It's not going to happen. You can't put on a bunch of solar panels and expect 18-wheelers to work. They don't. That's just the reality. Even electric vehicles. Where does the energy for the electric vehicles come from? It comes from a power plant. And the most effective power plants? Coal, gas, nuclear. That's just the fact. That's the numbers. You can tell me you want green energy. That's fantastic. And I'll tell you, you'll freeze in the winter, you'll boil in the summer, and you won't have enough electricity to power your iPad and your iPhone if you go all green. It just doesn't work. Ask France, ask Germany. They will tell you it doesn't work. That's just the reality. But one of the things is Nord Stream. Remember the Nord Stream pipeline? A lot of people may have forgotten about that. I didn't. The Nord Stream pipeline, which provides massive amounts of natural gas from Russia to Germany, to Poland, to Europe. It's very important for them to be able to make it through the winters. Remember how it was mysteriously blown up? The Nord Stream pipeline suddenly exploded in the middle of the ocean, and nobody knew what it was. Everyone was going, oh my God, who did it? It was the Russians that did it. It was the Americans that did it. It was the British that did it. And my own theory at the time was that it was the Iranians. It was the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, that they had gone out and that they did it. Why? To increase international instability. That's what I said at the time. And you can look up the videos, you can hear me say that. And I said, that's what I believe it was. No one in the world knew who did it. Everyone in the world was saying, we're just not sure. There's no conclusion. We can't figure it out. Well, guess what? Now we have an answer. And the answer, which is coming from France 24, an international news agency, which is considered centrist. I would say it's leftist. The media investigation finds that Ukrainian officer coordinated Nord Stream pipeline sabotage. This was from the Ukraine. Ukrainian forces went out and they sabotaged the Nord Stream pipeline to get international support for the Ukraine, to cause the friction between NATO countries and Russia, in particular the United States, to force us into this. Again, you may not think it's correct. You may think, oh, Mike, how could you be so sure of that? Let me show you. I believe I have it here. Is it on my display? Yep. And bear with me. Again, I'm working with one screen here, folks. So there it is. And the links for everything we'll discuss in the show is in the description. So you'll be able to see it in the description, read it for yourself. But again, this is coming from France. Who caused the Nord Stream pipeline, which helped to increase the pressure on NATO and Europe to join the Ukraine to fight against Russia? Where did that international tension come from? Ukraine. Ukraine were the ones that actually did it. Gee. So much for it being some plot by the Biden administration. It wasn't a plot by the Biden administration. It wasn't a plot by Putin. It wasn't something done because of, I've even heard people say it was the Israelis, it was the Germans. I've heard it was the UK, United Kingdom. I heard lots of the theories. Everyone did. Well, now we know what the answer is. Of course, is this major international news? No. Is it news in the United States? Absolutely not. Because the answer in the United States from the mainstream news media and from many politicians was, it's Russia. Russia's the bad guy. Russia is evil. They did it. Of course they did. Stop talking about this. Send over the money. Send Ukraine money and missiles and rockets and tanks and fighter planes because Russia's a bad guy. No, we were being played. We were being used. Ukrainian forces did it to make sure that we would send them tanks and rockets and planes. And the reason why the mainstream news media doesn't want to have this conversation is because we may not continue to send rockets and tanks and fighter planes and support to the Ukraine, knowing that they used the international tensions to get that support, that they lied to us. And that's embarrassing to the Biden-Harris administration, to the government in Germany, Macron in France, even the United Kingdom. They'd be embarrassed to let this really be a mainstream story, even though this was mainstream news. Yes, Dow says, Dow was trying to help me out with the display cable. Yes, it did. And as you can see, the second screen exists. It's just, I can't see it. What I can see on my second screen is just a blank screen. It's just black. I know it's there, but inside the system, I know it's there. Don't ask me why that's happening. I can't figure it out. I'm not enough of a tech to fix it. But we'll get there. So, now consider this. Nord Stream is very important. It's critical for energy costs. Because of the Nord Stream shutting down, because Russia continuously shuts down their natural gas pipeline into Europe, well, that costs more inflation across the world. In addition, why is this a problem for the United States? Well, partially because we're competing with Germany, we're competing with Poland and all of Europe and the United Kingdom for natural gas and energy. See, when Biden came in, he shut down the XL pipeline with Canada. He shut down a lot of the leases, and there are over 24 leases that go into natural gas production to find oil and gas and to have that produced. So he cut back because of green energy, most important thing, climate change, most important thing in the world. So he cut down on all of the natural gas and oil in the United States immediately, first week that Joe Biden was in, which drove up energy costs around the world. It also stopped America from being energy independent. And that means we compete with our allies around the world for the natural gas that is out there, which means it's more expensive for everyone. And it means that there's going to be less available for everyone because we're competing. Instead of selling natural gas to Germany and making more money, helping our economy and keeping down inflation, we're competing with them, increasing the cost because there's more demand. And Russia is taking advantage of that. And when Russia is pissed off at Germany, as they have been for the last year and a half, whenever they get too pissed off because Germany has given one too many tanks to the Ukraine, they just turn off the energy. And when it's the winter, Germans freeze. When it's the summer, they boil. They don't get air conditioning. They don't get enough energy to run their factories to make the bullets and the ammunition that the Ukraine needs to be able to continue to fight. Russia knows this. So this is why Nord Stream is so important, because in conjunction with the Biden-Harris administration's ecological policy, their policy for green energy, they then made that pipeline even more important and more critical and added to the inflation that you and I suffer every day. Again, this is because, and this is a conversation you don't hear in the mainstream news media because it might change the way you vote. It changes the way that you look at our government, and saying do something isn't good enough. When we say Did they do something effective? Did they do something efficient? And the answer is no. Then why are you reelecting them? Why are you even considering them? And when you think like that, well, that's not good for the next election if you're a Democrat. No, it's not the Windows display, and it's not OBS. Literally, it's the screen itself is down. Whether I'm running OBS, my display settings show both. It recognizes that the screen is there. It's just not working. But that's internal stuff. So again, this is how what's happening internationally affects you domestically. And it's a bit of a problem. But no one wants to tell you about it. No one wants you to know because, you're just an American. It's the same way that they don't want you to know that, according to Newsweek, North Korea is preparing for war. No kidding. This is international news. We are now hearing from various organizations around the world that are saying North Korea is in the middle of a buildup for war. I'm not shocked. Could it be the fact that in 2022 there were over 100 missiles, rockets, ICBMs fired by North Korea, the most in its history in 1 year? That they fired another 27 rockets, missiles, and ICBMs in 2023 alone. That they fired about 20 of them in 2021, right after Joe Biden took office. That they have been posturing and saying and getting more and more, well, I won't say violent, more militaristic, more aggressive, more prominent in their desire to warn the world that they are going to fight, that they want South Korea, that they want to unify by force the Korean Peninsula and to expand so that they will be able to deal with their economy and they'll be able to feed their people, and more so to tell America to screw you. And remember, we have a ceasefire with North Korea. The war has never ended. We've never ended the Korean War. And this is why we have the DMZ, the demilitarized zone. That border, because borders matter, is active, and it's been getting more active. We have been seeing more tensions rising. And we know that Southeast Asia is in the middle of the logistics phase of preparation for war. Japan is building its first military since 1945. South Korea is becoming the fourth largest weapons manufacturer in the world. The Philippines is militarizing, and they're going into joint operations with Japan and Australia, preparing and building up. Malaysia is building up its military. We are seeing Southeast Asia prepare for war. And the target, depending on which source you go to, we've had American generals who have said that it could be as soon as 2025. I particularly believe that it would be in 2028, based on the time frames of all the different nations that are militarizing. Their target dates on completing their militarization all end at about 2028, which means that's what we're probably going to see. And we know China has already said they're going to take Taiwan by force. Is this new information? Absolutely not. But it is information that the mainstream news media has been tossing aside. You haven't been hearing people talk about North Korea, except on this channel. Why? Because it's important to understand that North Korea, as a puppet of China, is part of the Chinese aggression. It is part of the militarization of Southeast Asia. And whether the United States likes it or not, there's going to be a war there. It's going to be one of three regional wars. We have one in the Western Europe right now. That's Ukraine-Russia. We're seeing the Middle East, which is always a powder keg, and we're seeing a regional war that is expanding when we're talking about Hamas-Israel, which is really Iran versus Israel. Hamas is the puppet of Iran. So is Hezbollah. So are the Houthi rebels out of Yemen. And they're all attacking Israel on the behest of Iran. And Iran, for its part, is attacking American forces in Syria and Iraq, because Iran threatened America if Israel defends itself, that Iran promised they were going to attack America. Not Israel, America. They have their puppets attacking Israel. As we can speak right now, Lebanon, the Hezbollah out of Lebanon, is attacking the West Bank of Israel right now. They're firing rockets pretty much every day. Those rockets come from Iran. And where are they getting the money from that? The same humanitarian aid, just like what humanitarian aid that goes to Gaza, well, that's being used by Hamas, the government of Gaza. Well, and Hezbollah is also taking humanitarian aid, using that money, and they're buying rockets, and now they're attacking Israel with that. We see that with the Houthi rebels out of Yemen. They're using money from Iran and rockets from Iran to be able to fire rockets, and if it weren't for the United States Air Force, aircraft carriers in the Middle East helping to protect Israel and the Iron Dome that we provided to Israel with funding last year, there would be thousands, if not tens of thousands, of Israeli citizens dead right now, civilians dead right now because of those attacks. It's a very wicked situation. But again, the big thing there, and I'm going to get to the comments in 1 second, is that North Korea has been making it very clear. Let me see if I can get this quote for you. I believe I have the quote. There it is. So there is a Kookmin University history professor, Andrei Lankov, was speaking to the Financial Times today. And he said, he specializes in Korean studies, and he says, the only way to interpret the North Korean focus on building more nuclear weapons is that Kim Jong-un is planning to mount a conquest of South Korea as part of another round of the Korean War. And he believes that the ambitions would become clear within the next 15 years. So 10 to 15 years is what he says. Again, this is coming from Newsweek itself. And let me see if I can show you that image as well. Bear with me as I try and bring that up for you. So there's that article. And so this is his quote. And again, this is from Newsweek today. The mainstream media hasn't been talking about North Korea. We have. We've been talking about North Korea since 2021, actually since 2019. We believe that they are one of the major threats faced against America, most importantly against our allies, and therefore America as well. Because we have agreements with South Korea, with Taiwan, with Japan to protect them, these actions by North Korea and China put us on the front line of a war. No one wants to talk about that because we're not prepared for war. And as much as, people are saying, oh, well, United States, we're the bad guys, we're always warmongering. We're not. This is what's happening around the world right now. We're not reacting to this in time. In fact, there's a poll just came out October 25th, 26th. Poll was taken. 72% of adults in America would not fight a war for America's interests. Just came out. This should terrify you. That 72% of Americans today are not willing to protect freedom in the world. And that's why, and this is something that we can see because recruitment levels are down. The Army missed their recruitment numbers again. That's 2 years in a row. The Navy missed their recruitment numbers again, 2 years in a row. The Air Force missed their recruitment numbers again, 2 years in a row. Marine Corps matched their recruitment numbers. They're the only ones that do that because Marines are a little bit different. But we are seeing fewer and fewer people go into our military, and the United States military is more and more pandering to the latest fad that we're warm, fuzzy. Join the military because it's warm and fuzzy. You can be a chef. You have 2 moms. You went to a sorority. You can be in the military too. No, that really doesn't work. as someone who's been in our United States military, as someone who has a family that has served in the United States military, I can tell you, it's not about being warm and fuzzy. Nobody in the military cares if you went to a sorority or not. In fact, they'll probably laugh at you because you did. That's not really important. They don't care how many moms you have. They care about how well do you carry the backpack, how well do you carry your supplies? Can you shoot straight? Can you hit the enemy with 1 or 2 shots? That's what they care about. It's about force multipliers, and that's all anyone cares about. I don't care how warm and fuzzy your life may be. I don't care what gender you want to choose. In the military, it doesn't matter. Can you do the job? We don't care about your feelings in the military because the military doesn't care about you. You're not a person in the military. People forget when you join the military in America, volunteer, you swear the oath, you no longer have a constitutional right to anything. You give up your rights. That's why it's voluntary right now. In joining the military, not just the Marines, but the military, you waive all of the rights that the Constitution provides. All of them. You are a piece of property of the United States government. You do have the UCMJ, Unified Code of Military Justice. That replaces the Constitution for you. Now, I say that because when you see all these ads in the United States military that are talking about how warm and fuzzy and fun the military is, it's not. It's not warm, fuzzy, or is it fun? That's not what the military is. It's not its job. It's not supposed to be. So kids are getting in and they have a misunderstanding and they're having a miserable time because they don't understand the requirements, the sanctity, the obligation that they are taking on, and what is the ultimate cost that you may have to give as a member of our military, that you may die. That's a reality. And I tell that to many people because the military isn't for everyone. I do believe in having mandatory military. I do believe in a draft that everyone, if women want the equal rights, fantastic. You're drafted too. Everyone in the United States. Let's go with this warm, fuzzy feeling. Go with the progressive idea. There is no difference between men and women, which is a lie. Go to basic training. Go to Paris Island. I will show you the difference between men and women in the military on a regular basis. Yes, there are a handful of extraordinary individuals that are different, but that are the same. But other than that, yeah, the difference is night and day, and it is genetic. It is a fact. But okay, let's go with the warm, fuzzy feeling from the progressives out there, and let's say that there is no difference. Fantastic. Everyone gets drafted. By the way, if you ask your feminist organizations across America, you ask the PC and the universities, and they say, oh, well, so women should be drafted too. They'll tell you, no. We want equal rights, and women should be able to be in the military, and they should be able to fight like any other soldier, but they can't be drafted. Wait a minute, but then that's not equality. That's not equal rights. Now you're playing a game. Now you're picking and choosing when it's important to be a woman versus just being the same as everybody else. No, that's silly. That's political. That's playing politics. That's playing a gender card, and it's ridiculous. Everyone, you want to have equality of the sexes, fantastic. Everyone, mandatory. You get out of high school at 18, you serve 2 to 4 years in the military, mandatory, absolute. It is a requirement for everyone, period. We see a lot of countries do that, by the way. A lot of NATO countries, a lot of Europe does that. Greece, I believe, is one of the nations. They've been doing it for, decades, that you serve at least 2 years in the military, if not 4. I say we go mandatory military. Not everyone agrees with me on that. I will check the comments in just 1 second. But that's what I say. And I think you would see a very big difference in the rest of the world because we would be matching our recruitment numbers. We would have more than enough people for our military, and the rest of the world would calm down because America would be well trained and well prepared to be able to deal with conflicts. You may disagree. That's fine. Tell me why. Don't tell me I'm evil. Don't tell me I'm a warmonger. Tell me why. Why shouldn't we have a mandatory military? Tell me why women shouldn't be drafted just like men. Tell me exactly why. What's the difference? Because if there is no difference between men and women, which we hear constantly from the left, there is no difference. Great. Then I want a draft for everyone. So tell me why we shouldn't have a draft and why the draft should only apply to men since men are the same as women. Something doesn't work in the leftist logic again. But, that's just the way. And again, this is something that no one wants to talk about. No one wants to have this conversation. Why not? If the left position is so obvious and so valuable and so useful, then why can't we talk about it? Why can't we debate it? Why won't they sit down and say, and here's where it is. Here's why it makes sense. Why won't they tell you? They just tell you to obey. Don't ask about it. It's obvious. No, it's not obvious. Tell me why. Tell me why all the feminist organizations are perfectly happy for men to be drafted, but not women. Please explain that to me. If there's no difference, and you want women in the military to fight in the front lines, which I don't agree with, but if that's what you want, why can't women be drafted? Especially when we know our Army, our Navy, and our Air Force are missing their targets because when we say the military is warm and fuzzy and you'll have a fun time, everyone knows that's a lie. So they're not joining the military. We're not saying that America is great and you should be able to protect America. That it is our military that allows us to continue to be the beacon of freedom in the world. It is only through the sacrifice of blood and sweat of our military around the world throughout our entire history of 247 years is the only reason why those progressives can go to college and be warm and fuzzy, sipping on a latte, holding their iPad as they protest whatever the hell they're protesting this week. Okay, let me go back to some of the comments here. So, Dow says, of course North Korea is preparing. Must be they saw an increase in orders for missiles, rockets, and large hats. Odd tangent. What is the fascination with communist militaries and large headwear? I'm not sure, but they do seem to like they like to look flashy. They like to look important. I mean, whether it's the Russian Soviets, you look at the various socialist nations around the world, they love to have all the medals and ornate. Same thing with dictators, same thing with authoritarian governments. We see that they like to try and look imposing in uniforms, and they like to have their big hats because it makes them look imposing. It's purely cosmetic, but you're right. They do like to have their big hats, and they love to have chestfuls of, Kim Jong-un. He has more medals than anyone, most generals don't have as many medals as Kim Jong-un, except for former General Mark Milley. He had all the medals. Man never went to war, but he had all the medals. Didn't serve in wartime. As I recall, he didn't serve in wartime actively, but he had a chest full of medals for I don't know what. But, he's like Kim Jong-un. Dow says, Switzerland, as an example, you stay in the reserves for a long time. Actually, the Swiss reserves, all men from the age of 18 until they are 54, as I recall, are part of the Swiss reserves. And all of them are required to have a firearm. What some out of California, if you're from California, you'd call it an assault weapon, but everyone else in the world would call it a rifle. Everyone is required to have a rifle in their home and be proficient with it from the ages of 18 to 54 in Switzerland. If I still remember, unless they made a change, that was consistent. User has been banned, likes to quote, service equals citizenship and voting. There is the reason why Starship Troopers, why Philip K. Dick wrote Starship Troopers. There's a reason why he said citizenship, service equals citizenship, and voting is only for citizens. There's a reason why he wrote that. And I know people like to look at the movie and go, well, it's satirical. It's kind of, there's more to this. And Philip K. Dick was really insightful and he really thought this through. I do recommend read the book, Starship Troopers. And when you look at the movie, don't look at it like it's some kind of joke, like it's some kind of satire. Take it serious. Think of it from a serious sense. Service equals citizenship. Why wouldn't it? Should we but that's another discussion there all its own. Dow says physical education and standardized schooling was supposed to prepare children to stay fit for service up until the mid-70s. I could believe that. And what do we have now? Kids who are fit to sit in a chair and play a video game. We are pumping our kids full of drugs, whether it's for ADD, ADHD, whether it's legal marijuana. You go down to the store. I'm in the Bronx. Every single corner has a marijuana dispenser and or drug dealers right outside the store selling illegal marijuana. This is every single block. Literally, I could point the camera out the window and take pictures of either the dealers or the dispensaries that are selling marijuana on every single block. And we're drugging our kids constantly. And they're looking to sit down constantly. They're not out playing outside. They're not running around. They're not getting physically fit in schools. Physical education is on the decline. Obesity is on the increase. Yeah, we're falling apart here. Dow says last year he reread the Constitution after a Liberty First round table. Voting is a constitutional privilege, not a right. Yes, that's true. The Germans did it right, Hugo Boss. Okay, that's funny. In terms of clothing. Yes, and user has been banned says, we have a chair force. Yes, we do. Again, I'm not telling anyone, see, I want to reemphasize, especially for new people who are seeing the channel for the first time. You may not like what I have to say. It's not about whether you like it or not. I don't care. This isn't about what we like. There are many of the things that we discuss on this channel aren't things that I like. They're things that are happening and we need to be prepared for them. And you may say, well, I don't agree. And that's fine. I don't mind that people disagree with me. I look forward to it. Last week we had DH, who was someone new to the channel, and said, Mike, I don't agree with you, and here's the reasons. And I asked him, what's your reason for disagreeing? Don't just tell me that you think I'm wrong. Tell me why. Don't tell me that you have a feeling, because we all have feelings. I don't care. You have your feelings, I have mine. I don't need yours. I have my own feelings. You have your own feelings. You don't need my feelings. That's the difference. Most of our media today, most of the news you're being fed is telling you how to feel. They're telling you what feeling you should be having. And that's the difference about this channel than many others. It's not about how you feel, because that's on you. You can feel whatever you want. But we're talking about policy, and feelings don't matter. No one cares. No one cares about feelings. China is not worried about how you feel. North Korea isn't worried about how you feel as they are preparing for war. Southeast Asia is getting ready for war. They don't care if somebody in the United States is sipping on a latte in a college and saying, oh, I don't feel like it. They could care less. They're getting ready for war. They are preparing for invasions. People are going to die. People are going to die. And they know it. They don't care how anyone feels about it. So that's why I don't worry about feelings. That's why you don't hear us talk about feelings in this channel. So you can feel however you want, but let's have the discussion. And if you think that I am wrong, if you come to a different conclusion based on the facts that are being presented around the world, not just in CNN, not just on MSNBC, not just on ABC or the New York Times, but the international news media and their objective facts that we can find. If you think I'm misunderstanding the facts, please tell me. If you think there's going to be a surplus of food in 2024, please give me the evidence why I would be happy to be wrong. If you think that China or North Korea will not go to war within the next 5 to 10 years, please show me the facts why. Not only would I be happy to know that, Indonesia, Malaysia, Japan, South Korea, we would all be happy to find out why they're not going to go to war. But no one believes that. There is no such data out there. It's feeling. People feel like there shouldn't be a war. That's not stopping it from happening. User has been banned says he misses when they sipped drinks with their little umbrellas. Well, go to Harvard. They're still doing it there. Because Harvard sucks. By the way, since we're talking about the disasters that are happening around the world, and I know everyone in the world right now is focused. Everyone's forgotten about Ukraine, Russia, because Ukraine is losing. And no one wants to talk about that. And no one cares about what's happening in Southeast Asia because no one started firing bullets yet. Even though this is probably the most important time to be paying attention and to be prepared because we can stop before the bullets start getting fired. But no one wants to talk about that. You know what they are talking? We're talking about what's happening in the Middle East. We're talking about specifically Hamas and Israel. I know a lot of people say, no, we're talking about Palestine. There is no such country. Does not exist. There is no country called Palestine. Does not exist. It's not on anyone's map. There is no Palestine. Throw that out the window. So when you're talking about it, you can say, well, I'm talking about the West Bank or I'm talking about Gaza. Okay, that's a territory within Israel. So you're talking really about Hamas, a terrorist organization. If you say you are pro-Palestinian, you are in fact pro-Hamas, the government of Palestine, elected by the Palestinians, the terrorist organization. There is no way to get around that. At the end of the day, you want to send humanitarian aid, you want to support the people, you're talking about supporting terrorism. And we're talking about supporting terrorism as Americans, and we will get into this in the program in a little bit, as Americans have been killed, and there are hostages being used as human shields right this second. And everybody who's like, oh, I'm pro-Palestine, you are in favor of allowing American citizens to be used as hostages and human shields, to be tortured every day. This is what you are supporting. I want you to understand that. Now, I'm not telling you that you can't support that. Fantastic. You can do whatever you want. We are in America. But I want you to understand what it is you are supporting. Those kids in Harvard and Columbia and Cornell University and Binghamton University, what are you actually supporting? You're supporting Americans being used as human shields and tortured every day. This is what you are supporting. Understand what you are advocating for and what the consequences of that is. But here's the thing. As everyone is focusing on Israel and they're focusing on Hamas and terrorism, kind of, you know what we're not focusing on? Sudan. We're not focusing on Darfur. And all these people who are telling you right now, they are so concerned about people who are being oppressed. They are so worried about the people who are being killed by an oppressive government. You know what? All of those people can kiss my bottom, my black, brown bottom. Please kiss it hard. Why? Because you don't hear these people talking about Sudan. When was the last time you heard anyone at Harvard, anyone, did I just close it? Anyone at Harvard, anyone at, where is it? There it is. Give me 1 second. I want to open this up. When was the last time you heard anyone at Harvard, at Columbia, at Binghamton University, any university, all these colleges that are all about, oh, we've got to help the oppressed people of Palestine. Okay, what about Darfur? What about the Sudan? We have seen, 3 times in my lifetime, an attempted genocide. 3 times. This has happened under the Obama administration. It's happened under the Biden administration. This is the 3rd time that there is an attempted genocide of people in the Sudan. And as this is happening, now for the 3rd time, there are 15,000 Americans who are in the Sudan stuck that no one is talking about. We don't even hear people talk. The news media doesn't want to talk about the Americans that are being used as human shields. And they absolutely have completely forgotten about the fact that there are 15,000 Americans in the Sudan right this second in the middle of a genocide, of an attempted genocide. But you don't hear anything about that. I don't see anyone at Harvard, at any of these colleges. No one is out there protesting that the warlords are trying to genocide people in the Sudan. What about that oppression? What about those people? Oh, you don't care about them? Is it because they're black? Because they're Africans? Is that why? Because that's the answer that we often hear from the left about everything. It's about race. You're not doing this because of race. You didn't go see the Marvels movie because, well, you're obviously a racist and a sexist. Well, let me put it back to you. Oh, elites around the nation. Are you ignoring Sudan because they're Africans? Is it because of their religions? Is that why you have abandoned these men and women and children? That there are hundreds of thousands, millions that have been displaced, tens of thousands that have been wounded and are dying by the hundreds of thousands, including 15,000 Americans, including civilians. 15,000 American civilians have been thrown into the meat grinder in the Sudan. That in Darfur, they are dying by the tens of thousands. And not one protest is coming out of any of the colleges, especially the elite colleges. Not one of them is talking about this. No one is running over to the UN and saying, you've got to do something about Darfur. You've got to do something about the genocide in Africa. That's why I consider them hypocrites. That's why I find the left and the entire progressive movement, they are blatantly political and they are blatantly useless. Because they'll tell you, oh no, this is about the oppression. Okay, well, let's look at Africa. Let's look at specifically, my focus is on the Sudan. Why? Because there's 15,000 Americans that the Biden administration told them, figure it out. Find your own way home. Same thing that the Biden administration said to Americans in Israel and Afghanistan and the Ukraine, now that we think about it. But he said, no, figure your own way home. Oh, you want the American government to help you to get home from Israel? Fantastic. We're going to charge you for that. You got to pay the government back. Okay. And for the ones in the Sudan this year, we're talking about April, what did the American government say? Figure it out. Get home any way you can. Talk to you later. Have a great life. Hope you make it home. The news media stopped talking about it. The last articles that, everyone, you don't have to believe me. Don't believe me. Do me a favor. Type in Americans in Sudan. That's it. Go into your web browser, type in Americans in Sudan. Do it for yourself. You will not see an article since May 3rd of 2023. That's right. I don't care which news, you're in Google. You're not going to find articles from the mainstream news media talking about this. They shut it down. You're not supposed to talk about this. You're not even supposed to know that this happened. I have talked to dozens of people who don't even know that there are 15,000 Americans this year that Joe Biden said goodbye and threw them under a bus. Forgot about them. Said, figure your own way home. Oh, it's a genocide? The entire nation's in wars. Warlords are going crazy. Why? Because Al-Qaeda and ISIS are in Sudan, and they're the ones who are in the fighting. Again, you don't have to believe me. Look at the article for yourself. This is from Politico, and they will tell you in the article that it is in fact there are the Arab Muslim influences, which is ISIS and Al-Qaeda, have entered into there. Where did they come from? They came from the prisons in Afghanistan. It is that simple. When Joe Biden ran away from Afghanistan, he tossed the keys to the prisons to the Taliban. The Taliban opened up the prisons and released thousands of members of ISIS and Al-Qaeda. And we have seen that those members went over to Africa. Think of Burkina Faso as one of the nations where they went into. And immediately there was a civil war. Same thing with the Sudan. There's civil war. Why? Because ISIS and Al-Qaeda went into those nations and they are pushing their religious fanatical ideology and they are committing genocide. And they're one of the major reasons why a genocide is happening. And you don't have to like it. You're going to say, oh, but Mike, that's, Islamophobia. No, it's not Islamophobia. It is a fact. It is being reported in the mainstream news media. They're just changing some words. They're Arab militants in Africa. Where did those Arab militants come from? Afghanistan. Who are the Arab militants in Afghanistan? ISIS, Al-Qaeda, and the Taliban. Taliban's busy in Afghanistan. ISIS and Al-Qaeda have moved on. They have expanded themselves. They have gone into Africa. We have seen it in multiple nations. Just because the media doesn't want to talk about the failure and the consequences of the Biden-Harris administration and their foreign policy doesn't mean it isn't there. Just means they don't want to talk about it because you might vote differently. It doesn't help to fortify the 2024 election. It doesn't help Democrats show up and vote. And that's why they don't want to talk about it. That's why they'll tell you, well, these are Arab militants, but they don't want to tell you what kind of Arab militants, because they're not indigenous to Sudan. These aren't Sudanese militants. These are Arab militants from Afghanistan, ISIS, and Al-Qaeda. Released because Joe Biden ran away. The consequences of 2021. And that cost us 5,000 Americans in Afghanistan. And now there's another 15,000 Americans in Sudan that are in danger. They are threatened. They are being tortured. They are running for their lives because of the Biden-Harris administration's policies. And the mainstream news media doesn't want to talk about it. You don't need to know. Even though those 15,000, they could be your brother, your sister, your cousin, your neighbors, brothers and sisters and family. These are people connected to Americans here. And they don't count. They stopped counting the moment that the Biden administration ran away. The moment that it was obvious that they said, oh, those are Arab militants stirring up a civil war in an African nation, and they all came from Afghanistan. Don't talk about it. Afghanistan is off limits. We don't talk about Afghanistan. We don't talk about the retreat of Joe Biden. We don't talk about that failure anymore. It's not good for elections. But American citizens are dying. American citizens are running for their lives. These are American citizens that are supposed to be protected by the American government. Yes, but we don't talk about that because the American news media doesn't want to talk about it. This is an election year coming up. This is an important election. You can't talk about that. People might vote differently. The people they need to vote may not show up and vote. Who knows? You might, just maybe, you might get students at Harvard that might protest abandoning American citizens in Sudan. They might, oh my God, they might actually care about Americans. The kids at Harvard, the kids at Columbia, the kids at Cornell, they might just start caring about American citizens who have been put in danger because of these progressive non-policies. They can't talk about that. Oh my God, no, no, no. That can't happen. Don't you dare talk about it. Dow says that the UN is full of evil. I agree. Mike Bowie. Mike, you've joined us. Thank you. Mike says Africa qualifies as black on black crime, and therefore it's not newsworthy. You know, Mike, it might be just that simple. It really might. It might be as simple as we don't talk about black on black crime in America in any of its forms. We don't talk about gang wars. We don't talk about gang fighting. We don't talk about the connection of drugs to gangs in the United States, especially when it deals with minorities, and in particular the black community. We don't talk about it. We don't talk about the gratification and glorification of drugs and violence in the black community. In fact, last week when I brought it up and we were talking about the statistics on it, DH joined the show, was commenting in the comments and was typing up, "Oh, Mike, you're just racist. How dare you mention black on black crime? How dare you mention the connection of black on black crime and drugs? How dare you talk about those things? You're talking bad about the black community." No, I'm talking about the facts, the reality. And maybe, as I said, it just might be the reason why Harvard doesn't care about Africa is because there are a bunch of Africans. And Africans fighting Arabs, well, they don't care about that. That's obviously not as important as Palestinians. You know, Hamas, that's much more important. Why? Because their teachers told them that the kids in Hamas, the Hamas terrorists, are good guys and Israel is bad guys, and Africa doesn't matter. No one cares. Their teachers don't tell them, "Oh, by the way, Sudan, you should be paying attention to the genocide there. You should be protesting about that. You should ask the UN and the United States to do something. And by the way, there are 15,000 Americans whose lives are in danger at this moment. We should be protesting to get them home." Oh, no, but that's not important because the professors don't care. The U.S. colleges don't care. And I just want you to think about that, folks. I want you to understand they don't care. They only care about the things that push their agenda. And their agenda, apparently, is Hamas. Their agenda is supporting the genocide of Jews. That's what they are supporting because they support Hamas. And they're telling you, well, no, we don't support Hamas. We support Palestine. Palestine doesn't exist. There is no such thing as Palestine. The Palestinian people, well, they elected Hamas. That's their government. That's where all the money flows through. That's where all the negotiations and discussions are with. It is Hamas, a terrorist organization. You support Palestine. You support Hamas. They are inseparable. Whether you like it or not, whether you want to acknowledge it or not, it is inseparable. You are supporting one when you support the other. That is a fact. And that's okay. They say that's a good thing. But, a genocide, that could be stopped. The Sudan doesn't need to be in the middle of a genocide. Darfur does not need to be another genocide. Doesn't need to be happening. We could stop this. If America was paying attention and we were trying to get back home the 15,000 Americans that they just threw away, we could do something about that. And by the way, India, the United Kingdom, they could do better too. Mind you, they have about 5,000, they have less than 5,000 Indians. There are less than about 5,000 British who are in the Sudan as well. But those countries are getting their people home at a rate about 6 to 8 times more than the United States is. They've actually paid attention to their people. They've actually been trying to get their people home. In America, we don't even talk about it. And you wonder why North Korea thinks this is a good time to get ready to fight. Why China's saying this is a good time to fight. Why Russia said, hey, you know what? This is a good time to fight. Why are they saying this is a good time to fight? Because Americans are busier supporting terrorism and ignoring their fellow Americans. And we have studies that are saying, and 72% of them wouldn't even defend America. Can you believe that? The poll that came out, Ipsos poll, 72% of Americans that were polled would not defend America. What do you think you're going to get as a government if you don't support our home, our country? If you don't support freedom of speech, what do you think you're going to get? Because no other country has freedom of speech. None. Not Australia, not New Zealand, not Canada, not the United Kingdom, not France, not Germany. I don't care which first world nation you would like to pick. No second world nation, and God help you, not the third world nations. There is no nation that supports, that believes in self-defense, especially for women, which is the Second Amendment, or supports freedom of speech, including freedom of religion. None of them do it besides the United States. We are it. And if you're not supporting that here, you're getting it nowhere. Just go and ask people in China if they have a freedom of religion. Just go into Venezuela and ask people if they have the freedom of speech. Go and ask people in Cuba or North Korea if they have a freedom to defend themselves. You may not like this. This is the reality. And people are going to watch football today. And they're going to watch the Housewives of wherever the hell. And they're going to watch MILF Manor. And I don't blame you. Everyone wants a distraction. Obviously, they're not going to see the Marvels because that's not a distraction. That's painful. That's torture. Which is why it made $47 million domestically. Why it's a complete failure. Because that is torturous. Because that is indoctrination of the very worst sort. That it is blatant and it is horrible. It is bad writing. It is bad acting. It is bad. And it is being shoved down your throat and you're being told, just accept the propaganda. All of it. Just take it and give us your money. So that's not entertainment. We're not going to count the Marvels. But people want to be distracted. But the problem is, you can't distract yourself from what's happening every day. This is affecting your life, whether you think so or not, whether you want to accept it or not. This is going to affect you and your kids and your grandkids. It's going to affect your future. Whether it's in terms of increasing inflation, which means it's all going to all your money is going to go to your bills. You won't be able to afford anything, and you won't be able to go to see that next movie. Because eventually they're going to make a good movie that isn't the Marvels. They're eventually going to make a good movie that isn't propaganda. And you may want to go see it. You won't be able to afford it. You're not going to be able to continue to have 5 streaming services, and we're seeing that already happen. People are cutting back. You're going to only be able to have 1, maybe none. You got to think ahead, folks. This is all costing you. You may not notice it right now, but it's happening. You know, and I'm the guy who has to be the messenger, and of course, I'm the bad guy. I'm the bad guy for telling you the truth. I'm the bad guy for pointing out what's actually happening out there. And again, all of the things I'm talking about, they're in the links are in the description. So you can go to the description. You'll see every one of these things I'm talking about. They're there. And China, you know, it's kind of funny, but you know who is paying attention to Africa? China. As I got the police running on by behind me. Yeah, they're probably coming for me. But China's paying attention to Africa. Unlike the Obama administration, unlike the Biden administration, China's paying attention. China they're buying up all of the heavy metals that you need for electric vehicles. Remember, they're telling you, oh, you got to have an electric car. We have to have windmills and we have to have solar plants. Guess where it's all coming from? China. Because China's made all the deals with Africa. China cares about Africa. China is concerned about the wars and the fighting in Africa more than the American government is. And what's going to happen? China's going to make all the deals. We're paying for China. Your money is going to go to China. I don't know. Maybe it's me. Maybe it's just me. By the way, I keep mentioning this poll about 72% of Americans, and I know this is right after we just had the We had Veterans Day. People have bled and died for you to have the right to live your life. It's really, really sad, but it's the truth. And people say, Mike, but you got to be wrong. That can't be true. Here it is. Here it is. And so here it is right there. Americans don't want to fight for their country anymore. 72%. 72% not willing to fight. It's absolutely jaw-dropping. Where is this? There it is. So, excuse me, it's Echelon. Echelon Insight did the poll. So I misstated who had done it. And it's Echelon did the poll of over 1,000 adults. And they don't want to fight. They want the benefits. They want to have the iPads. They want to have the lattes. They want to have their avocado toast. They want to live great. They just don't want to suffer for it. They don't want to bleed for it. They don't want to have to stand up for anything. They don't want to have to actually fight for it, to preserve it, or to make sure it's there. They're just going to assume that it's just going to happen naturally. That people are just going to let them have avocado toast. They're just going to let you. It's just going to happen. It's natural. No, it's not. This is a losing proposition. We're not going to be able to support this for very long. And I know I'm talking about these things because I want you to be prepared, folks. Again, you don't have to agree with me 100%. Maybe you think that the United States will be able to make agreements with African nations to be able to get the heavy metals we need for solar panels and electric vehicles. You could think that. That's not factually true. It's not. We're already 2 decades behind China in making those agreements. That's a fact. But you can still think that they'll suddenly decide, oh yeah, we want to be on America's side. Because America didn't help anyone when Sudan was in a war. America didn't help anyone as ISIS and Al-Qaeda invaded into their countries. In fact, it's the Biden-Harris administration. America was responsible for letting loose thousands of members of ISIS and Al-Qaeda all throughout Africa and didn't stop them, didn't even think about it. You think that when they realize that, and they do you think they're more likely to do a business deal with America or less likely to do a business deal? Which one do you think would be naturally the most logical thing to happen? And therefore, plan accordingly. These are things we can change, folks. But that means you have to be able to turn around to your politicians and say, do something effective. Don't just say do something. Say do something effective. Do something efficient. Do better than what you have been doing, because you have failed so far. Kamala Harris has failed. She failed at the very first job she was giving, which is protecting our border, reducing the number of illegal aliens in America. She failed. Fully, absolutely, totally failed. And yet people are saying she's great. How? Please point to one thing she's done right. Please point to me something that she did that's actually worthwhile and beneficial to the United States. I'm unaware of it. I cannot find anything she's done. She's raised money for Democrats. I know she's done that. But again, talking about Tennessee, when it came to the Tennessee shooting, when those children were killed by the Tennessee trans shooter, Kamala Harris went to Tennessee not to see the families. She never went to the families of those children and said, I'm sorry your kids are dead. She never once did that. She went to Tennessee to make sure that the Democrats and the Tennessee state government were able to stay in power. That's what she went there for. She was there to protect Democrats in office, politicians. She didn't care about the people. And she's done that same mentality, that same attitude has been consistent for 3 years of Kamala Harris. Everywhere in the world she's gone, she is a complete failure. If someone knows of something she's done as a success, please let me know in the comments. I will be happy to correct myself if you can point to even one thing she has been successful at. And other than fundraising for the Democratic Party, name something she's done that is a benefit to the United States, in part or in whole. Name one thing. She didn't help the people in East Palestine, Ohio. Remember that? I didn't forget. She did nothing to help them. She didn't care. Didn't go there. Glenda is with us. Hello, Glenda. Glenda the Good Witch. Glenda, this is the first time you're on with us on the channel. I thank you for being part of the audience. And Glenda says, what do you think about Brandeis and Columbia saying no to SJP type groups? I want to be clear. When you say SJP, what do you mean? What is that an abbreviation for? I just want to make sure that we're talking about the same thing. But I'm very upset with all of the colleges, especially the higher tier colleges in America, in that they have been indoctrinating our youth, the future generations, rather than teaching them to think critically, to be able to have discussions. I have better conversations with blue-collar workers about international politics than I do people who go to these elite institutions. Mind you, I've been doing this for well over 2 decades now. I am very well read. I am very familiar with politics, left, right, and center. And I follow international politics more than most members of Congress. And I will have a more in-depth, more reasonable conversation with blue-collar workers who, in between watching football games about what's happening with America, its future, and the world, than I will with individuals who've gone to Harvard or Columbia or some of the elite schools. Because the elite schools are indoctrinated. Their answer is America's bad and everyone else is good. And the more socialist the nation, the more quote-unquote oppressed the nation, the better they are, although they have exclusivity about that. So, Hamas is far more important than the Sudan, which is more important than Burkina Faso, which is more important than Malaysia. They have a hierarchy. It is their equity. They have an equity to the nations in the world. And some nations are important and other nations don't matter. In fact, most nations don't matter. And so I really have a very low opinion of most colleges. And the higher the education system, the less I have it. I have very little. A lot of people may not be aware. Until I came into the Bronx, before I moved back to the Bronx, I was a member of the board in SUNY Broome. It's a BBC, the Broome County College, Broome County Community College. Now it's called SUNY Broome. And I was one of the members of the board of their political outreach, getting citizen outreach, getting citizens involved in politics. And I was one of the board members there. And I had so many arguments and so many fights with them because the professors there overwhelmingly were pushing liberal progressive ideology and not actual discussion. And I had it happen multiple times. I remember I was doing a discussion, I believe it was on the ninth and 10th Amendments, and we were doing this for Lincoln's birthday, an event, and I had a professor who was there with me, and we're talking about this, and she couldn't help but try and turn it into socialism. She was trying to highlight how great socialism was. And I'm like, well, that has nothing to do with the 9th or 10th Amendments. In fact, that's kind of counterproductive. And I had to battle with her in front of students at an event that I created, that I was presenting on, and she wanted to co-present, but she wanted to push a political agenda. And I was just talking about the 10th Amendment, making people aware that it exists, making people aware that you have the power of the government. And her answer was, no, but you should use that power for socialism. So yeah, this is one of the reasons why I have such a low opinion of college after college after college. where you have Binghamton University, another example, where you have Harvey Stenger of Binghamton University, who was in favor of progressive leaders of tomorrow protesting and shutting down the voice of Dr. Art Laffer, a Nobel Prize-winning economist, and preventing him from being able to speak to the students of Binghamton University, just because he didn't like Dr. Art Laffer's politics. He's an economist. He was coming to the school to speak about economics. And the principal, the president of Binghamton University, was more concerned about politics. He was more concerned about pushing a progressive message. It's sad. It's sad. So I hope that kind of answers your question there, Glenda. It's a little bit long, but I'm not known for having short answers. Glenda goes on to say, did Kamala Harris ever pretend to care? No. Kamala Harris was always, from day one, ambitious as hell and just wanted power. So I can't say that she's been dishonest in what she's there for. She's dishonest in, she went from saying that Joe Biden was a racist, and now she says he's fantastic because she got to be VP. So she's a bit of a sellout, quite honestly. Glenda goes on to say, I never thought that Kamala or Joe would ever accomplish anything. Who would have thought otherwise? There's a difference, I would say, between accomplishing nothing. Bill Clinton, as an example, accomplished nothing in his presidency. Look at his presidency and look at it empirically. He passed nothing. He did nothing. He literally, Bill Clinton coasted on the reforms and changes made mostly by Reagan, Ronald Reagan, and he basically coasted off of all those changes to the economy, and he just let it pass. Remember, we had the chairman of the Fed, Greenspan, was constantly in the news saying, we have a bubble, an economic bubble that is going to burst. The dot-com was a bubble, and we need to do something, otherwise this economy is going to suffer. And he was publicly saying this over and over again. And Bill Clinton did nothing. He said nothing. He passed nothing. He just coasted. Things were good, and he just let them continue to be good. And then the bubble burst as Clinton was elected. He was out of office, passed the torch on, and then the economy burst. Why? Because it was going to. It was just a matter of time. So, but Bill Clinton did nothing. He didn't really hurt America. We could have gotten rid of Osama bin Laden under the Bill Clinton administration. He didn't want to cause any waves. He didn't want to be involved in the Middle East. He did nothing. And you can say, well, that's damaging enough. But look at what we get from Obama and what we've gotten from Biden and what we've gotten from Kamala Harris. They are doing things, and they are hurting America. They've hurt us economically, like with the XL pipeline, with their changes in taxation, spending. They're hurting America. We've seen that their foreign policy is hurting our allies and America, and it's encouraging rogue nations like Iran, like terrorist organizations like Hamas, to go out barn stomping on the world. There's a difference between expecting them to be useless and do nothing, and what they are doing, which is actually hurting everyone. Glenda says that Kamala is successful at cackling and word salad. I stand corrected. Glenda, you are absolutely correct. Kamala Harris is very good at word salads, saying a bunch of things that mean absolutely nothing, but she's saying it fast and with a big smile and cackles at the end of it. And the news media goes, that was fantastic. What a wonderful statement. What did she say? She made a huge statement. It was fantastic. What did she say? It was fantastic. Okay, there you go. Oh, Students for Justice in Palestine. That's what, when Glenda was mentioning the SJP, Students for Palestine. Again, there's variations on Students for Palestine or pro-Palestine. Again, all of that is you're pro-Hamas. It's just nicer ways of saying pro-Hamas. It's the same way that they say, well, I support women's choice in abortion. Okay, you support murdering babies. Oh, no, you can't say it like that. That is what you're doing. You like the words abortion, and you don't, even if you say, well, you're pro-abortion. No, I just believe in a woman's right. You're pro-abortion. You're pro-killing babies. They don't like that. No, it's a fetus. It's not a baby. Okay, change the words however you want to. It is, at the end, the same thing. You're in favor of killing babies, period. Whether you want to call that baby a fetus or a baby, it's still the same thing. It's a human being, you're killing them. Okay, in utero, in the womb, you're killing them. So that's abortion. And, but you can't say it like that because it doesn't make me feel nice. It doesn't make me feel good. It makes me feel bad. This is what they're worried about. So that's the same thing with saying, I'm pro-Palestine. So you're in favor of terrorism. You're in favor of Hamas. You're supporting a terrorist organization that believes in genociding people because they don't believe in religion the same as Hamas, or more importantly, Iran does. And this is what you're supporting. You're willing to support genocide just because you were told to. I don't support those organizations at all. I'm trying to catch up on the comments here, folks, so give me a moment. Glenda says Bill Clinton did the Oslo Accords. For better or worse, in hindsight, it was an epic failure. I don't find the Oslo Accords as being significant. I don't see that they did anything. But you can make that argument. Yeah, I mean, there was an accord. He did do that. So he was virtually useless. He virtually did nothing. Let me say it that way. He virtually did nothing except continue what was already in place. Truly, I find nothing unique or original or important or impactful that was done during the Clinton presidency, except that he continued to allow things to stay exactly as they were, like he found them. And he didn't change anything. And therefore, we had a lot of changes that we had to do because he did nothing to impact the economy, the international security, one way or another. User has been banned. I'm not even going to, your whole thing about the abortion, I'm not even going to go there. Glenda says that pro-choice is more word salad. I agree. Again, and these may be unpleasant things to have a conversation about. I know there's people in the audience that are going, Mike, I don't want to talk about that. I understand, but we need to. There's a lot of things that are happening in the world that are affecting America and Americans and our allies around the world we don't want to talk about. No one wants to talk about the fact that the American hostages that are held right now by Hamas are being used as human shields. No one wants to talk about the abuse, sexual abuse, that those hostages are facing right now, men and women. Yes, sexual abuse against men and women that are held by Hamas. No one wants to talk about that, but we must. We must because it's real, because it is happening. And in not talking about it, we actually empower it. When we don't talk about the 15,000 Americans in the Sudan that were abandoned, we empower nations to take Americans hostage and to kill them without fear of repercussion. When we forget about the Americans, that 5,000 Americans in Afghanistan, hundreds of which are being tortured by ISIS and Al-Qaeda right now. When we don't talk about that, we enable the next country to say, well, they can torture Americans too, because they'll get away with it, because they're under the radar, because this administration, these progressives, don't want to talk about it, because they're squeamish. You know what's squeamish? Living through torture. That'll make you squeamish. Telling me that I can't talk about trying to save those Americans from that torture? I don't care if you're squeamish or not. I don't care if you are, whatever you're imagining as the torture they are going through, the torture they're going through is worse. And we're not talking about military personnel being tortured for military secrets. We're not talking about members of a terrorist organization being tortured to find out where they're trying to bomb next, where the next suicide bomb is, whether or not the 169 terrorists that entered America have a plan to commit another 9/11. No, we're not talking about that. We're talking about moms and pops, parents and kids who are just living their lives, going to school and work, and they're being tortured. That's a big difference to me. But of course, this is why this channel gets suppressed, because I'm actually having an honest conversation with you. Not that I'm not telling you what to believe. I'm not telling you what to feel. That's on you. What I'm doing is I'm asking you to think about this and to hold our politicians accountable if you feel, like I definitely do, that they are failing, that they have not done their job, that they are not accomplishing what they promised and what they are supposed to be doing. And we've been talking about this for years. That's the part that really annoys me. I've been talking about this for years. Just like we were talking about the food shortage for years. We've talked about America's economy for years. We've been talking about what's happening with the upcoming funding for the United States. We have a week to fund the United States, to pass the budget, which is not going to happen, or to just put in another continuing resolution to kick the can down the road so that we can keep the doors open for the United States government. We've been talking about this for months. While everyone else was talking about, oh, well, Mike Johnson, does he have a black son or not? Is he a good guy or not? I could care less. What did we say when Mike Johnson was voted in as speaker? The very first thing that we said, get a deal done. We have to pass a budget. We need to pass a budget. Don't kick the can down the road. Pass a budget. Because America is at risk. We are losing our credit rating. We are just hearing from Moody's has just come out and said that the United States is in danger of losing its last AAA rating. We are going to be a AA rated nation. Now, people will say, well, that doesn't matter. I mean, that's like second tier. It's top, perfection is AAA rating, and then the next tier is AA rating. You're missing the point. It is a decrease in the trust, faith, and confidence in the United States government. Look at every dollar that you have. What does it say? We trust in our government. Trust. Your dollars are based on trust. The ability of American dollars to buy things, the buying power that you have is all built on trust. And our credit rating being AAA means that your trust is valid, that it's as good as being gold. It is almost a guarantee that that dollar is worth what you think it's worth, what you have been told and promised it is worth. And when we can't pass a budget, when we keep having continuing resolutions, when we cannot determine how we are spending our money, and we just keep raising the debt limit without pause, it just goes up. Republicans raise it, Democrats raise it, everyone raises it. We spend more and more money. Every time we're spending $2 trillion a year, we're spending more than we bring in. And people are saying, I don't trust you can actually pay this back. I don't trust what the money is worth. I don't trust that you're a leader of the world anymore. Everything that made that dollar guaranteed is fading away. And so if we drop from AAA ranked to just AA ranked, I guarantee you it's going to drop further and faster. That is a signal that we are at the end of our empire. And I have no problem with America being an empire. Empires aren't necessarily bad things. They're bad if you lost to the empire, but if you're in the empire, they're not necessarily bad. And I happen to be an American. I like an American empire. I like America being top of the hill, being the strongest, best nation in the world, and in particular, being the freest nation in the world, and having the highest quality of life in the world. I like that. If you like your lattes and your iPads, you should like it too. But we are losing that. And if we lose our AAA rating, everything goes with it. If you think we have a lot of inflation now, wait until you see our rating drop again. Because I guarantee you, if it goes to AA, it will drop to BBB. We will lose ratings faster and faster because the underlying problem isn't getting fixed. It's only getting worse. We're only spending more money. We're only having more and more debt that we cannot pay off. And once they start knocking down those dominoes, which quite honestly already started under the Obama administration. It was the first time that we had ever been downgraded in our history, in the existence of the United States government. And now it's continuing under the Biden administration. The dominoes will continue to fall, and with that, inflation will go up, and the dollar will be worth less and less and less. And your life is going to become more and more difficult. Quality of life of Americans will decrease significantly. It's unpleasant. People will be mad about it, but it is true and honest and real. And anyone who's telling you, no, that won't happen, is lying to you. They have an agenda. Anyone who tells you that's not how that works, they have an agenda. They have a political agenda. Because that is how it works everywhere in the world, in every country in the world. Give me a second. Let me catch up to some of the comments again. Am I back in the Bronx? Yes. I've been back in the Bronx since July. This is our temporary offices. I'm rebuilding my life. I lost my home. It's hopefully will be sold in December. Otherwise, I lose it. I got a temporary pause by the bank, so we're trying to sell it right now. I will probably make nothing for that, but and then we just start. Could I unseat Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez? Probably not. She has a stupid amount of money, and her district, District 14, which is in the Bronx and Queens, it's just outside of where I'm at, it's all massively, massively Democratic. It's, in fact, progressive. It is a progressive neighborhood. And it is very difficult to be a Republican and to win in the Bronx because being Republican is seen as being evil. Somehow, if you're a Republican and you're black, well, then you're evil and you're not really black. They've convinced people of that idea. So it'd be very difficult. I would need a stupid amount of money. Same thing with Jamal Bowman. Glenda says that you were using a different username? Okay, Glenda. Cool. My email address? Sure. I'll tell you. And it's available for everyone. Hang on one second. It's public. It's public information. Everyone knows. That's my email address. So I'm not sure who Glenda is. I got a couple of guesses, but I won't go out there. Let me go on. Moving forward with the show. Because we're talking about a lot of important issues here. And I've talked a little bit about Iran, but let's talk about the United States more directly. We've talked about international policy. We're talking about the factors that are affecting the United States indirectly as the United States directly is affecting the rest of the world. And we've seen this, and the consequences don't end just because the news media stops talking about it. An example of that being Afghanistan. news media stopped talking about 5,000 Americans being abandoned in Afghanistan or 10,000 Americans in the Ukraine. We stopped talking about that. But the consequences, like ISIS and Al-Qaeda being released into the world, those consequences are continuing to affect us because in 2023, what is the response? Now we have civil war, and we have wars going on, genocides going on in the Sudan. Where did that come from? Afghanistan. That came from the Biden administration. That came from 2 years ago. News media stopped talking about it. The consequences didn't. But let's talk about what is happening right now. And we know that according to CNN, as reported on Friday at 7 a.m., they're talking about, we now are hearing from the various nations throughout the Middle East that America is considered a bad guy because Israel is defending itself. Now, I know a lot of people will have different opinions about this. But the answer that the Biden administration is starting to hear is something that's totally predictable. The strongest ally of the United States is Israel. No kidding. And so we are standing by them. In particular, and something that most of the world has forgotten is Hamas killed American citizens. Hamas kidnapped American citizens. By the way, we don't even know how many. We believe there's about at least 33 Americans were killed by Hamas. At least. We initially believed that there were somewhere around 16 Americans that were captured as hostages. At least. Today, as of today, that number is now 9. What happened to the other 7, 8 people? No one knows. No one wants to talk about that. We had double digits. We were absolutely sure that there were at least 16 Americans that were held hostage by Hamas. Today, they're telling you it's only 9. Wait a minute, what happened? And I'm counting the fact that there were 2. In fact, at one point, the numbers were as high as, if I remember correctly, 22 Americans having been taken as hostage out of the 242 known hostages taken by Hamas who are being tortured right now. At least 22 of them were initially believed to be American. That number was then changed by most of the major media to 16. Today, that number has now become 9. And I'm really upset about this because this is exactly what they did when we were talking about Afghanistan. The number of Americans that were abandoned in Afghanistan changed on a monthly basis. Joe Biden on September 1st, 2021, told the American people there were 99 people that did not get out of Afghanistan. That is a lie. 3 days later, the State Department came out and said, well, it's somewhere between 100 and 200 Americans. We had 8 different reports by the United States government over the next 6 months changing the number. 32, 100, 150, 200, 6. They kept changing the number. And then at February of 2022, the news media stopped talking about it. The Americans didn't come home. We found out in the first year, over 900 Americans had come home. 900 Americans came home without the Biden-Harris administration's help from Afghanistan, and private American citizens helped 900 Americans come back home. News media didn't talk about it. It was reported internationally. American media didn't talk about it because Joe Biden had an election to win. Oops, we're not talking about that. And we're not talking about the fact that Joe Biden looked you in the face and lied about the Americans that he abandoned and knew were there. And we're seeing the same thing happen now with Americans in Israel. The amount of hostages that are in Israel right now, they're lying to your face. They keep changing the number, and the number keeps going down if they don't ignore it altogether. We went through an entire week without any of the major news media mentioning American hostages. They've talked about Hamas, they talked about Palestine, they've talked about the war, but they didn't mention, oh, by the way, Americans died and Americans are held hostage right now. Even when they mentioned that Hamas had hostages, they never mentioned, and there are American hostages. You think I'm wrong? Go back, look at all of the coverage from CNN, MSNBC, the New York Times, the Daily Beast, ABC, CBS. Look at the mainstream media and look at their coverage. Every time they mentioned the hostages in the last week, they did not mention American hostages. They didn't tell you how many American hostages because they want you to forget. They don't want you to remember is doing nothing to bring America back home. And I know that's going to shock some people. I'm sure that that is a realization some people had not made up until now, who are watching this program and going, wait a minute, no, that's not true. I'm sure that they said something. No, they didn't. Go back and look at the coverage. Let me be fair. 90% of all the coverage in the last week, in 7 days, did not mention American hostages, tell you the number of how many American hostages were being held by Hamas. 90%. Every one of those pro-Palestine protests at all these colleges, at University of Massachusetts, Cornell University, at Cooper Union, at Harvard, they never mention how many American hostages, what's the number. They don't tell you that there are American hostages, nor will they say how many. They don't talk about how many Americans were killed by Hamas. They won't mention that because you might not support Hamas if you knew the truth. You're supposed to forget that. That is not the feeling they want you to have. They want you to support Hamas. They want you to support genocide because they told you to support genocide. So don't think about it. Don't remember that there are Americans that are caught up in the middle of this. And we, as the American people and our government, have an obligation to go save those people, to protect them and to save them. Now, this week, I believe the 5th Marines were supposed to, or 4th or 5th Marines were supposed to be deployed within a week. And they're going somewhere in the world. It is my belief that they're going over to Israel to prepare to go into the West Bank, to go into Gaza, to get those American hostages and to get them out. And I hope that that is exactly what the Biden administration is doing. I hope that that's why they're keeping it secret. They could be going to Sudan to get Americans out of there. I would be happy with that too. Back up and support our Americans in Syria and Iraq. And guess what? That is where they are going. And I don't have the official countdown to guarantee that, but I can tell you, where are these American troops going? They're going to Syria and they're going to Iraq because that's where Iran is fighting right now. That's where they're going to go. They're going to back up our troops there. Are they going to go and save any Americans that are held by Hamas? No. Are they going to protect Americans in Israel from Hamas? No. Are they going to go and get any Americans that are struggling to get out of the Sudan to avoid ISIS and Al-Qaeda in that nation? No. They're going to go to Syria and they're going to go to Iraq where Joe Biden wants to fight. Remember, Joe Biden, the first day he was in office, we were one of the first organizations, news media commentary, to even mention that on day one, Joe Biden doubled the number of American troops fighting in Syria. Joe Biden is continuing the fight that Obama started with Syria. Remember that? That was the big thing for Obama. He was pissed off at Syria. We were fighting in Syria because Obama didn't like Assad, who was in charge of Syria. And Joe Biden is continuing to do what Obama did. And he's fighting the same fight in Syria. Why? I don't know. Why are we fighting in the Syrian civil war? I don't know. I don't know where the American interest is in the Syrian civil war. Ask Barack Obama. He didn't explain it, neither is Joe Biden. But that's what we're doing, and we're about to send more Marines and more troops to fight that even more. That's where they're going. Meanwhile, Americans are dying in Sudan. Americans are dying in Afghanistan. They're dying in the Ukraine, and they're dying because of Hamas in Israel. Whoa, what happened here? Why is my screen frozen? Tell me you guys can hear me. What is happening? Can you guys hear me? I'm imagining that you can hear me. And I don't know what just happened. It looks like my computer has frozen, but I don't know why. There we go. Okay. Sorry for dead air here, but I just noticed that my computer's like screwing up. Mary, thank you, Mary, for letting me know. Yes, it's saying that it go in and out. On my side, everything was recording, and then I just saw it was frozen. So I don't know where I left off. I know Dow was thinking that perhaps... What is happening? Hang on, let me try and fix something here. Maybe it's the number of windows that I have open. Whoa. Come on. Sorry, folks. Sometimes it's hard to tell what's going on because I can't necessarily always see what's happening real time. Just one guy trying to run the whole system here, so bear with me. Trying to see if we can get this to run a little bit faster. I'm not sure why the system is acting up. Probably because of the topic that I'm talking about. Hopefully you're still able to hear me, the audio, even as the video is freezing. I don't know. My system is working overtime. Don't know why it's working overtime today. I can hear my computer just running super hard, so I apologize. And I'm trying to get it to run a little bit better. It doesn't seem to want to do what I'm asking it to do. Okay, so let's recap. We have Marines that are going over to Syria and Iraq. They're not going into Gaza. They're not going into the West Bank. They're not going to save any Americans. The United States government is negotiating with Hamas, a terrorist organization, to try and buy back American citizens. And as we are doing this, the news media is protecting the Biden-Harris administration by telling you that there are no hostages there, or as few as possible. They keep dropping the number magically. Magically, we're going from 22 to 16 to 9, and they keep dropping the number. Mind you, none of these people are coming home. No one has come home. We've had two. Two Americans came home, because Joe Biden promised to give $105 million to Hamas. So $55 million per hostage. And now the numbers are just disappearing. We just don't know where they're... Again, this is a setup. I think that Biden gets maybe another 2, maybe 3, and they'll say, oh my God, look, there were only 9 hostages, Americans that were hostage. Joe Biden got 50, 60% of them because he got 3, 4 people out. He's done a fantastic job. No, there were 22. And he's gotten out maybe 10, maybe 20% of them. Fantastic. Get them all. I don't want a percentage of how many people he abandons. I want them all home. He got 90% of the people home from Afghanistan. That still left thousands of people and hundreds are being tortured. I want them all home. There are 15,000 Americans he abandoned in Sudan, 10,000 in Ukraine. I want them all home. I don't want a percentage of them home. Okay, so the audio is being... Okay, as long as the audio is there, I can live with that. That's the more important part to me. And probably part of the reason why the channel is not doing so well in terms of the video. I don't think the social media giants like this. So that's what's happening with our soldiers. Let me go on. Let me move forward. Because there's more that's happening in the United States than just that. There's a hell of a lot more going on. Why is my computer's acting up all the way? Because not only is it that we are hearing the rest of... One of the things I mentioned at the time, when October 7th, I think it was October 9th when we had the live stream, and I said then, and I say again, the number one thing that the Biden administration needs to do, besides getting our people back home, is to insist and to support Israel and Saudi Arabia in declaring peace, to help move the peace process forward. Whether you want to call it part of the Abraham Accords, you want to call them the Biden Accords, I don't care what you want to call them. What he needs to do is to be an international leader and help support our ally in creating more peace in the Middle East. To insist to Saudi Arabia, to Yemen, to Jordan, to all those nations that we need more peace. That not supporting Iran, not supporting Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Houthis, by not supporting radical, fanatical Islam, that's a good thing. That in not supporting genocide, it is a good thing. And that the United States will back the nations that support, that do not support genocide or fanaticism. That's what we need to do. That's not what Joe Biden's doing. And that's why we're getting feedback. See, he's sending more of our army to Syria to fight in the Syrian civil war. And people in Yemen and the United Arab Emirates, throughout the Middle East, they're saying, why are you fighting in Syria? Why is America there? You guys are bad guys. We don't like you. No kidding. We shouldn't be fighting there. This isn't our fight. We should be focusing on Israel. We have a reason there. We can turn around and say, yeah, but they killed our citizens. They have our citizens as human shields. We're involved there. And if we are willing to not bomb the living hell out of, because quite honestly, if we wanted to, we could obliterate, one aircraft carrier would obliterate Gaza Strip. That's a fact. We could obliterate it tomorrow if we wanted to. And we should be saying that. We should literally say to all of the Middle East, we could obliterate the Palestinian people completely from the face of the earth. We don't. And we won't let Israel completely obliterate Gaza, because they could. Let's be honest here. They could. Whether you're saying, oh, they've killed 11,000, it's war, and people die, I get it. If they really wanted to obliterate Palestine, it wouldn't be there anymore. Israel has more than enough capability. The United States, with one aircraft carrier, has more than enough capability to wipe out the Gaza Strip in a day, if we really, really wanted to. But we don't. And we should say that. And we should say, because we are restraining ourselves, is because we believe in peace. Now, mind you, we will defend ourselves. We will protect our people. We will get our people back home. And we will wage absolute war, which we are really good at. For you threatening our people, for killing our people, for capturing our people and torturing them, we will rain down bloody murder. Absolutely. And you will feel that heavy as hell. But we prefer peace. And if you are on the path to peace, you're our friends, you're our allies. We will take care of you. And we will protect you in the same way that we protect our own people, in the same way that we're willing to protect Israel. Absolutely. We will protect Israel just like we protect our own people, like we protect all of our allies. And that's why you will be safe too. Please join us in the road to peace. Let's move past this. Iran wants you to be angry. Iran wants you to be emotional. They are using Hezbollah and Hamas and the Houthis to try and cloud your minds and make you think that genocide is justified. It isn't. And that's why the Palestinian people still exist, because genocide is evil, and no one is genociding them, even though we can. You know we can. We know we can. Hamas and Iran know we could in a day, but we don't. Even when they provoke us, even when they kill our people, innocent children and babies, even when they capture our citizens and use them as human shields and torture them, we still won't genocide them, even though we could. Because we really are trying for peace. And we really want you to join us in peace. Because if you really want us to push, if you really want to see what we can do with a big stick, you won't like what you see. Now, is that honest? Absolutely. Is it vicious? Absolutely. Is it terrifying? Absolutely. And it's supposed to be. Because it's true. We could flatten the Gaza Strip if we wanted to. So could Israel. If we wanted to. We could flatten it in a day. But there isn't a goal of genocide. Because if there was, it wouldn't be there anymore. And seriously, Biden needs to emphasize this. He really needs to emphasize this. He really needs to just come straight out and say, if we wanted to get rid of it, it'd be gone. There's nothing in the universe. There is nothing that can stop us. If we want to wipe out the Palestinians, if we want to wipe out Hamas tomorrow, we can do it. It won't exist. And we don't. And we aren't. Because we're not the evil monsters you want us to be. We're not the evil monsters that are attacking our people. We're better than that. Join us in peace. We really need to start emphasizing that. We really, really do. I know my computer's been acting up, and that's a shame, because we've been going about 2.5 hours, and there's a bunch of other stuff I wanted to talk about. Let me talk about the economy really quick. So the economy's screwed up. So on top of all these other factors, does anyone know? Matter of fact, let me say. Do you even know what the unemployment rate is right now? Did anyone notice that in all the news talking about Mike Johnson and his black son, whether the black son exists or not, which I think is kind of racist to even ask, to deny the existence of Mike Johnson's adopted son who happens to be black, and their conversations talking about how Palestine or Hamas are great, and their conversations trying to distract us from what's happening all around us. Did you notice they didn't mention that the unemployment rate increased to 3.9%? Did you notice that they didn't mention that the economy got worse? They kind of missed that the number of small businesses in America shrank. The engine of employment, the engine of our economy, 70% of all the jobs in America are small business jobs, and that shrank. The number is down. It is down versus last month. It is down versus a year ago. Things are worse than they were, and they're getting even worse than that. Again, this goes back to what we were talking about with inflation. This is going back to what we were talking about in the beginning about energy. This is going back to the food shortage that's going to be continuing in 2024 and into 2025. Joe Biden, Bidenomics, you were told this summer, it is great. You just don't understand. How many times did you hear from Karine Jean-Pierre? How many times have you heard the Biden administration say, no, the economy is doing great. You're just stupid. You just don't get it. You just need to wait and see. Because the economy, look, the unemployment rate is at 3.6%. Everything is fantastic. You just don't know. Those evil Republicans just don't understand. The unemployment rate's 3.9%, and they won't talk about it. Oops. Did that number come out? We didn't hear about it. Forgot to mention that on the mainstream news media. Forgot to mention that small businesses are closing and that there are fewer small businesses out there, that more people are working part-time, and they're working part-time because that's the only job that's available. Oh, you may say, Mike, how could you possibly know that? Because that's the numbers from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. That's from the United States government itself. That's their numbers that they published. The data is there. But MSNBC didn't tell me that because they don't want you to change your vote. But the New York Times didn't talk about that because they don't want you to change your vote. My local politician hasn't mentioned how bad the economy is. They didn't quote the Bureau of Labor Statistics. They probably don't even know. They're parrots. They say whatever they are told to say. And the reality is the economy is that bad. It is getting worse. And I guarantee you, if you were to look at the real numbers, they're even worse than the numbers that are getting reported. This is after the government is trying to make it look good. This is after they're trying to improve it. We're in the fourth quarter. And we see there are fewer jobs. There are less people working. We're seeing that things cost more money. When I say the economy is screwed because of the bad leadership, this is what I'm talking about. And they told you, no, you just don't know what you're talking about. In April, in February, they were saying, you just don't understand. Our credit rating is going down. No one trusts us. The cost of everything is going up, and businesses are shrinking, and small businesses are shrinking. Unemployment is increasing. But Joe Biden's a great guy, and the economy is doing fantastic. Do you see there's a disconnect here? That this doesn't make any kind of sense whatsoever. That if you are trying to be consistent at all, you can't be. If you're a progressive, you have to do mental gymnastics to try and find some way to say, well, actually, it's because of racism and sexism, and somehow that equals a bad economy. And it's got to be because of Republicans, and somehow, somewhere in there, Orange Man bad has to be at the core. It is absolutely Donald Trump's fault that 3 years after he was in office, 3 years into the policies of the Biden administration and progressivism, that, it's got to be Donald Trump's fault. Somehow. Show me how. Please explain to me. Biden came in and almost almost universally on day one, reversed almost all the major policies of the Trump administration. Almost all of them immediately. That's why by February, we were getting record numbers of illegal aliens entering into the United States. Because they knew the day he got in, he said, I'm changing it all. Opening up the border. And everything changed. Shut down the XL pipeline. They knew the opportunity was there. And now this is the result of that 3 years later. Here we are, and we can see the result. It's right in front of you. Unemployment is going up. Small businesses are closing down. More people are working part-time. More of them are working part-time because that's the only job they can find. But I'm the bad guy because I'm not blaming this on Donald Trump because he's not the guy in charge. Joe Biden is. Kamala Harris is. Because I'm blaming the people who actually do the job. I'm blaming the people who are in office right now. If Donald Trump was in office, I'd blame Donald Trump. He's not. If it were Donald Trump's policies, because if Joe Biden did exactly what Bill Clinton did and changed nothing, I'd blame Donald Trump. That's not what happened. And anyone who tells you it is lying to you. If anyone is telling you the economy is doing great, they are lying to you. They're telling you, oh, the rich are getting richer. No, they're getting poor too. They just get poor slower than the poor people. Poor people get screwed because when inflation goes up, it hurts them a lot. It hurts rich people a little. But guess what? Rich people make businesses. Poor people don't. That's an important distinction. But no one wants to talk about that. They're not talking. Notice, this is the time we should be talking about the unemployment rate. We're talking about passing a budget. Well, actually, no, we're kicking the can down the road. We're not passing a budget. We're going to have a continuing resolution. And in January, maybe February, we're going to talk about funding the government in an election year. It's going to be ridiculous. It's going to be stupid. It's going to be hyper partisan, and everyone knows it. And they're going to make deals and deals and kick the can down the road as hard as they can because nobody wants to talk about the government shutdown in the same year that we have a presidential election. That is a fact. They're going to make a horrible deal, both sides, just so they don't have to talk about it, just like they did about raising the debt ceiling to $35 trillion. Why did they set that for January of 2025? Because no one wants to talk about that in an election year. They want to talk about it sometime other than then, kicking this down the road. But it hurts you. It just means more inflation. It means that your life is going to be disrupted because you're not like Barack Obama, a multimillionaire. You're not like Nancy Pelosi, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Chuck Schumer, Kirsten Gillibrand, Joe Biden. You're not a multimillionaire. In fact, did you know that since 1970, every single president everyone who's been president has made at least 2 to 10 times more money after being president, all of them except for Donald Trump. He's the only one who lost money. I find that very interesting. Every single president, Republican and Democrat, made more money because they became president than ever before, but Donald Trump is the only one who lost money. It's interesting. Take from that what you will. But they are hurting us. This is hurting us. And the fact that CNBC doesn't want to talk about it doesn't mean it's not happening. And the rest of the world is feeling this. Because if we are correct, and we said in August of 2022, America is in a recession. And that recession, if you remember in our conversations, you look back in our videos, that recession started August 2022 and will continue until 2025. 2025. That's what we predicted. I think it's absolutely still correct. And that means the rest of the world's in a recession as well. In fact, we're getting very close to a depression. And I understand they changed the definition of what is or isn't a recession so that Democrats look better, so that they can do better in elections. But the fact is, we are in a recession. The economy is horrendous and it is getting worse. And you can only prop up the facade, the smoke screen can only last so long before people see the truth. And what happens when they see it? And then they panic. And then they freak out. Then they'll react. And then people are going to scream and they're going to say, do something. And that will make it even worse. Because the answer is never do something. It is never telling politicians, just do something. That is never the answer. That is always how we get into worse situations. That's why we see Hamas attacking Americans in Israel right now. That's why Hamas has American hostages right now. That's why Iran is attacking Americans in Syria and Iraq right now. Do something. That's what we said about Afghanistan, and this is what the result is. You may disagree. That's okay. Tell me why. Tell me how I am wrong that the consequences are continuing and they aren't good. That the consequences are rapidly showing up in front of us and they are a mountain of problems that we need to deal with as a nation. Let me see here. I wanted to talk about, there's a few other things I wanted to talk about. Hang on. So again, I think that Speaker Johnson is failing the American people by kicking the can down the road. We're going to get a deal. That deal is going to be, we'll fund the government, and it's going to kick this down the road to February of 2024, and then they'll make an abysmal deal that'll kick the can down the road till after the election. That's not helping anyone. It is bad. And this is why America's credit rating is going to drop to AA rated. And when it does that, you're going to see inflation jump. It's going to skyrocket higher because no one's going to trust America. And you're going to see the unemployment rate increase. We're going to be well over 4%. By February, we should probably be at about 4.3% unemployment. Watch me. You may think I'm wrong. Don't get fooled because we're going to have a bunch of people getting jobs for Thanksgiving and Christmas. People are going to buy less than they have been buying because things cost more money and they have less money and they don't trust the economy. We're going to see 4.3 unemployment by February of 2024. I'm very sure of it. I'm very sure of it. Can't guarantee it, but I'm very sure of it. Well, here's something else I wanted to talk about. And while all of this is happening, so it's kind of interesting that while the economy is screwed up, while we're seeing that international problems are getting worse and worse, and our allies trust us less and less, and even fewer Americans are willing to stand up for the nation because they don't understand if you don't stand for something, then you fall. We're also seeing that the social experiments that have been going on, well, we're starting to get results. It's kind of like defunding the police, which is a social experiment saying, well, what happens if you have less people enforcing the law? Will that reduce crime? We know what the answer to that social experiment is. The answer is no. Crime will go up. What about if you reduce the punishment? People will go into jail for less time. We have a revolving door that we let them out. We don't count the small crimes. Will that reduce crime? We know the answer to that. The answer is no, it doesn't reduce crime. In fact, it increases crime, especially when you add that with defunding police. So if you defund the police and you reform justice, then you increase crime. And we saw that. Think of all the Walgreens that have shut down on the West Coast. And they're shutting down here on the East Coast. Think about the crime the amount of crime that is in America, and that violent crime is up. And I know what you're going to say, but Mike, I saw in the news, they said crime is down. Crime is down versus 2022. Except if you look back 4 years ago to 2019, crime is up 24%. See, remember, we peaked in crime in 2021. We had an absolute surge when we defunded more police than we ever would have imagined. We defunded the police. We reformed all of the justice. We let prisoners out over and over again, gave them a revolving door, and crime skyrocketed. And now that we're trying to, wait, that didn't work. Let's kind of pull that back a little bit. Now that we're trying to rein that back in, oh yeah, we're seeing some crime down, but it's still higher than it's been. It's still higher than when things were normal, which is 2019, not 2020, not 21, not 22, 2019. So if you want to know what the baseline was, go back to 2019, and violent crime, including homicides, are up 24%. This has failed. Defunding the police failed. Social justice or reforming justice, or they have all the different names for it. None of it works. None of it has worked. But the latest thing that I think is important to understand is, at the same time that this is all going on, that inflation is rising through the roof, that people are terrified about everything that's happening overseas, that 169 terrorists are running rampant across America, that our colleges are actively teaching kids to hate their own nation, as the economy is falling apart, and we have a man in the White House who doesn't know what's going on. He inspires no one. In fact, he does the exact opposite of inspiration. And no one trusts any of our elections because we're seeing irregularities beyond belief. They're so busy fortifying. Well, there was another social experiment that went on. Hard drugs. Legalizing drugs. And I know all of my friends who are libertarians are going to say, that was a good idea, but I don't know if they did it right. Let's legalize all drugs. I know all the libertarians. I know they love to say, just legalize the drugs. It's okay. No, it is not. It doesn't work. Last week, I showed you what happens when you legalize drugs and you have safe spaces. I showed you at the very beginning of the show what happens when you have drug addicts breaking into people's property, destroying that property just so they can get high, stealing people's property just so they can get high, costing individuals and communities thousands of dollars and peace of mind. I showed you that evidence empirically last week. Well, this week, we now have studies that are out. And everyone's talking about it again. Oregon decided to make hard drugs, fentanyl, heroin, opioids, legal. It was legal to have these drugs, cocaine, legal to have these drugs, okay to have these drugs, to use these drugs. It was safe and it was secure, and that would answer the problem. And they told you that if you legalize these drugs, well, that will reduce the number of people who are getting drugs and overdosing and crime. It's going to reduce it all. And what happened? Didn't work. Didn't work. Oregon isn't the solution. Legalizing drugs isn't the solution. Same thing that everyone has been saying for a long time. And I understand why the libertarians, my friends who are libertarians, will say, but Mike, but it's individual freedom. I understand that. And I do love and support individual freedom. I also understand junkies are criminals. Addicts are bad people. A person, before they're an addict, can be a saint. They could be a good person. After being an addict, recovering, they could be a very good person. An addict is not a good person. They're bad people, and they do evil things. And legalizing drugs only enables the very worst in an addict. It's like safe spaces. And I hear all the time, all the progressives, and they're like, we need safe spaces for these addicts so that they can get high. No, the Biden administration taking your tax dollars to buy 30 million crack pipes and pass it around America isn't a good thing. These are not helping anyone. This is enabling drug use. It is destroying our communities. It is destroying our neighborhoods. It is destroying a generation of our kids. We are in, again, I mentioned earlier, I can go right now in the Bronx, walk down any block in the Bronx, and you will see someone selling drugs. Is that helping our kids? Saying to our kids, the way to escape this poverty, just escape a difficult life, bad economy, what's the answer? Get high. That's not the answer. That isn't going to get you out, because it's like drinking. Yes, you get drunk. Yes, you forgot about everything. And when do you wake up with your hangover, you're going to be more poor and still in the same problem you were in before, maybe even worse. Maybe with additional dumb things that you did that are going to negatively impact you. You're not helping anyone. And Oregon, saying that hard drugs were legal didn't help anyone because they didn't fix the problem. The drug addicts were still drug addicts. And they still got high. And they still committed crime so that they could get high. You didn't help anyone. Maybe it's me. I don't know. Maybe it's me. Maybe it just seems like it's such a crazy idea that the best way to help people isn't to tell them, go get high again. I'm sorry. That's not the solution. If someone wants to get high, I am absolutely happy to help a drug addict get clean. I have tried to do that in my private life. I have tried to do that publicly. I have always been an advocate to try and help people who want to help themselves. But they have to want to help themselves. If they want to be an addict and they just want a better way to, they just want to be a better addict, they want to be able to access drugs better or faster or more safely, I don't want to help them with that. That's not something I want to give them any benefit with. Let's see. Yeah, by the way, I'm getting a message right now. My sister's telling me because my puppy is losing his mind, as you can hear. Come here. Come here. By the way, this is my puppy. You're hearing him in the background. He's losing his mind here. What time is it? Stop. We'll go. So, all right. So, I got to take my... Khan, stop. So I'm going to take my puppy out in just a minute. But I want you to take a look at this study from Oregon. I want you to think about this. And for everyone who's saying that legalizing drugs is the answer, look at the social experiment. And I'm really tired of these social experiments. They don't work. Defunding the police didn't work. It didn't make people safer. It didn't help anyone. Red flag laws didn't work. They never were intended to work. These things do not help you. Stop with these social experiments. I understand it makes some progressive feel good about their lives, but it's not good. This isn't beneficial. Let's stop doing this dumb stuff. Yes, so Mike Bowie's talking about Vancouver and other parts of the world where they legalized, they weren't working. It's really bad. Look, folks, there's more that I wanted to talk about. I may come on later on Rumble directly to go live there. My puppy obviously needs to be taken care of, and I love him, so I got to take care of him, and he's been waiting. So let me leave for a little bit. I want you to think about these things. I want you to share these thoughts. Definitely. Let's talk more about this. I look forward to seeing your comments after the show in the comments, and I will be back with you guys very, very soon.